We'll do that again. So a warm welcome to those attending the petition hearing for the Cabinet Member for Planning, Housing and Economic Growth, and to our viewers watching live on the Council's YouTube channel. My name is Councillor Steve Tuckwell, and I am the Cabinet Member for Planning, Housing and Economic Growth. Details of the business to be considered today are shown on the agenda, copies of which are accessible online underneath the live broadcast. For those present in the room this evening, welcome, and intending to speak, please note that you will be filmed and any statements you make will be recorded and made public. A reminder to anybody speaking today that your voice will only be audible online if the microphone is switched on. In terms of fire alarms this evening, we are not expecting one, but if we do have a fire drill or an emergency evacuation and the alarm goes off, please do follow officers, either side of me, to the fire exits and out of the building to the designated meeting points. For mobile tablets and devices, for those in the room, please switch off any mobile devices before the meeting starts or put them onto silent, although myself and officers will be using devices to view this evening's agenda paperwork. For meeting feedback, those attending in the public gallery, again a warm welcome to you. There are some feedback forms available for you. You can see them in the yellow forms there for you to complete, and for those watching online, there is a link to the feedback form directly underneath the broadcast. So we'll do some introductions. So I've introduced myself, but I'm supported this evening by Hillingdon Council officers. So we have Steve Austin, who's our Traffic, Parking, Road Safety and School Travel Team Manager, and we have Naveed Ali, who's our Democratic Services Officer this evening, making sure everything runs smoothly. So over to the agenda, and agenda item 1 is declarations of any interest in matters coming before this meeting. Don't think we have any. Agenda item 2 is to confirm that business for this meeting will be taken all in public this evening, and agenda item 3 is to consider a report for officers on following petitions received. So that's all of the introductions done, and we can actually now get to the main body of this evening, which is agenda item 4, which is a petition requesting traffic calming measures between Borough Hall Circus and Botwell Common Road. So I think we've got the petitioner this evening is Mr. Kieran Corkery, but I think we have a written statement from Mr. Corkery. So if you are watching, we will read that out now so that we can consider the points that you've raised. So over to you, Naveed.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to confirm that Democratic Services have received a written statement from the lead petitioner with regards to the Botwell Lane petition. 2026 marks a big year for us and for our home. 100 years since the house was built, 30 years of our family's ownership, 30 years since I was born, and the birth of my wife and my first child. A lot has changed over that time, but nothing more so than how busy, noisy, and increasingly stressful our local area has become. Growing up, Botwell Lane was reasonably fast. My sister and I were taught to be afraid of it, not of our exaggeration, but because it was the cause of death for several family pets over the years. Most recently, my wife and I rescued an abandoned kitten who was narrowly avoided the same fate, saved largely by her own timidity, and as the vet described it, strength of muscle. These may sound like small stories, but they are symptoms of a much bigger issue: speed, volume, and a lack of appropriate traffic management in a residential environment. Botwell Lane is surrounded by schools, parks, and several conservation areas. It has the potential to be one of the most pleasant and community-focused roads in the borough. Instead, its amenity is regularly disrupted by horns, sounding as early as 5 a.m., street racing, modified exhausts, and speeds that are frankly shocking for a residential street. Added to this are persistent parking pressures, worsened by through traffic and its use as a convenient cut-through. Despite the area being well served by public transport, including a direct bus route to Heathrow, this is not simply an inconvenience, it is a quality of life issue. Noise pollution affects sleep, stress level, and mental health. Excessive traffic discourages walking, cycling, and children's independence. As a new parent, I am already thinking about whether I would feel comfortable letting my child walk, cycle, or even cross the road safely here in years to come. All I am asking today is for a serious review of traffic calming measures and for the Council to consider a low traffic neighbourhood scheme or similar interventions. There is already recognition that this road requires management. The narrowing at Borough Hall Circus and the 16-ton weight limit through frequently ignored by HGVs and coaches show that intervention has been necessary in the past. What I am asking is that this thinking be extended to reflect modern realities, best practice and the well-being of residents. Low traffic schemes are not radical across London and beyond. They have been shown to reduce speeding, cut noise and air pollution, improving road safety and encourage active travel while still allowing access for residents, emergency services and essential vehicles. They are flexible, evidence-led and can be trialled, reviewed and adjusted based on real-world outcomes. Botwell Lane would be an ideal route for a safe cycle connection between Borough Hall and Lake Farm. Complementary measures such as additional street trees, width restrictions, enforced weight limits or model filters could all contribute to a calmer, greener and more welcoming street. These changes would not only benefit current residents but also support the borough's wider objectives around public health, climate resilience and sustainable transport. Importantly, this request is coming from the community. My neighbours and I have recently set up a local group with the aim of improving the neighbourhood, and we would welcome the opportunity to contribute ideas, local knowledge and constructive feedback as part of any review or trial process. Botwell Lane has been our family's home for generations, and we hope it will remain so for generations to come. With thoughtful, proportionate intervention, it can become a place where people feel safe, connected and proud to live. Thank you for considering this petition, and I sincerely hope it can be the start of creating a healthier, quieter and more pleasant environment for everyone who lives here.
Okay, thank you Naveed for reading that out so well, and again thank you to Mr Corkery. If you are watching, you've made some really good points there and a very eloquent summary that we will give some serious consideration to as part of the debate with this petition. But I think we've got a couple of ward councillor comments that we'd also like to just hear read out, and then we can take those into account. So over to you, Naveed.
We have received a written statement from the ward councillors in relation to the Botwell Lane petition. We have received the first one from Councillor Curling and Councillor Gardner. The full length of Botwell Lane is in dire need of measures to stop the behaviour of some drivers, who appear to use the road as part of their regular racetrack during most of the day, especially in the evenings where it appears for some reason they find it necessary that music from their vehicles needs to be at top volume. We as councillors are minded that this section of the road mentioned is residential, but is also a bus route, has a school nearby, and not forgetting Compton Road, which is used as a cut-through for a great many drivers. We ask that everything possible is done to ensure that the residents and others using this road are no longer subject to the antisocial and illegal behaviour by some drivers. Many thanks, Councillor Gardner and Councillor Curling.
Okay, thank you Councillor Gardner and Councillor Curling. Again, if you're watching, thank you very much for submitting your comments this evening. We'll take those into account in our deliberations. But I think we have another ward councillor comment as well, and the location for that is because this particular location is split between two wards. So I think we've got Councillor Corr's comments as well. So over to you, Naveed.
Thank you, Councillor. We have also received a written statement from Councillor Corr. Please note that I am in support of reviewing the need for traffic calming measures in the area. Although I am unable to attend the hearing in person, I would be grateful if my support could be formally noted as part of the record. Kind regards, Councillor Corr.
And again, if you're watching, Councillor Corr, thank you for submitting your comments this evening. Okay, right, so we've heard from the lead petitioner, Mr Corkery. We've heard from two sets of ward councillors, which is good. Steve, over to you for any sort of technical input on this particular request.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I mean, there's a lot of really interesting suggestions put forward by Mr. Corkery, and obviously this is the first time we've had the opportunity to look at them. So it's not something that we've had time to prepare for. But I think the important thing that Mr. Corkery has made, the point that he's made is things need to be evidence-led. And I think that's the key to it. And I think all of the things that the ward councillors and Mr. Corkery have brought up need to be substantiated. And I think one way forward would be to undertake some independent traffic and speed surveys in the area. And what would be very helpful, Chair, if the ward councillors would be put that, as well as Mr. Corkery, to find out the areas of particular concern, so we can place these pneumatic tubes across the highway, and they will look at traffic speeds, traffic volumes, the times of day of the sort of irresponsible drivers, if there's a pattern there, the direction of flow, and also vehicle types. So that gives us a really good indication of what's happening in Botwell Lane, and could be the start of the process, I think.
Okay, thank you for that, Steve. I think in terms of where we're going to take this, we have two recommendations in the report. The first one is to meet the petitioners, which we are here, and we've heard their comments, albeit online. And we've got some really interesting points here made by Mr. Corkery, which has been supported by two sets of ward councillors. Firstly, obviously, just to acknowledge Mr. Corkery has some good knowledge of this area, given that it's been his family home for over 30 years, so he knows this area very, very well. And I think we share some of the concerns that have been raised here in terms of poor driving behaviours and excessive speeds. But there's been a couple of other issues that have been raised, such as LTNs, low traffic neighbourhoods, that we possibly just need to have a look at, see whether or not the geography allows for that. But I think in terms of the recommendations, the first one, as I said, is to meet the petitioners, which we're doing now. The second one is to, as you just said there, is commission an independent 24/7 speed and traffic surveys on Botwell Lane. That will enable us to sort of see what is the scale of the problem. It will give us in terms of direction of travel, speeds, types of vehicles, and it will be over a 24/7 period for about a week, maybe a little bit longer, but not during the school holiday. And I know we've got one just about to come up as well, so officers will determine when that can be carried out in a few weeks' time. So I'm happy to agree both of those recommendations, and then take this one forward for further review by officers once we have that information. So that will conclude the proceedings for this particular item, and I'd just like to place on record my thanks to Mr. Corkery for his statement, obviously submitting the petition, and also ward councillors for their input this evening. But those two recommendations are approved. Thank you. Okay, right, that enables us to move on to agenda item 5, which is Northfield Parade Hayes, petition requesting a one-way system. Is that Mr. Thind? Okay, we've met before, haven't we? We have. So you know how it all works. Do you want to come and address the hearing this evening? Okay, Mr. Thind, it's good to see you again. Coming a regular at these meetings, but it's always good to see you. Just as a reminder, you've got 5 minutes to address the hearing. 4 minutes will be on green. Then it will, between 4 and 5 minutes, it will go on to amber, and then when we get to 5 minutes, I'll politely draw you to a natural conclusion. But I'm sure you've rehearsed that, and we're ready to go within the time scale. So when you're ready, if you can press the microphone button, and then we'll start the timer.
Firstly, obviously, thank you to the Cabinet Member for planning, housing and economic growth. I also wanted to give gratitude on behalf of all the petitioners to Dan Kennedy and Stephen Austin as well. We all recognise that obviously it's a lot of work for us petitioners to get petitions done, but nothing would be possible without the mentioned individuals, so that's just a pass of gratitude from all petitioners. So just to set some context, Not that the report did a bad job, but the Northfield Parade is a vibrant corner of our road. I've been a resident of the locality for 23 years, and it's where I've done all my growing up. It brings business, it brings convenient service for all residents of the surrounding area, and we're very well known with the pizza shop, the laundromat, and then also the cycle shop. It's where I've bought my cycles from a young age, where we get them serviced, but disappointingly it's also becoming one of the biggest inconveniences and hazards for users, motorists and residents like myself. And this is predominantly due to the lack of formalisation and regulation of how the road is used, specifically the way you enter and leave. So with traffic entering through either way, that being from Station Road and North High Road, there have been multiple times when vehicles have been locked in with nowhere to go forward and nowhere to reverse. So this has caused many incidents of road rage, some cars having to go onto pavements, and a little bit of commotion as well. I don't like to speak badly of my local area, but if you're ever bored and reality TV isn't doing it for you, you can just go and look at the commotion on that road, and it'll probably do a better job, if not as good as one. Like I said, yeah, the main problem is the locking in, and this is obviously made even worse when we have bystanders crossing the road to get to the shops, to get to the bus stop that is adjacent to Northfield Parade, and it causes even more risk to those who are not in actual motoring vehicles. It has now become so bad that very rarely do you actually see people use their vehicles to enter the junction to use the shops. So many who frequent the shops for all those services know now it's better to just walk there or park in another area and walk there rather than get stuck in and take that risk of, like I say, being locked in. So that is the scenario, and it's affecting shopkeepers, it's affecting business, and even local residents like myself have seen the effects. Moving on to the report, I did want to focus on some of the contents, just because I feel like they will deserve some input from the petitioners as well. So, point 3 mentions no recorded incidents on Northfield Parade, and this is believable, so I don't feel that is false, but I think it's due to the way the road is set. So, the road winds and has a curve to it, and it also has parked vehicles on the left side if you're entering from North Hyde Road. So naturally, anybody who cares about their vehicle will slow down, even if they do like to race their cars or not go to the speed limit. So due to that the natural bend and the reaction of motorists, I'm not surprised there are not many collisions. I'm not surprised that there's not many reported car accidents. But the incidents that do take place are the ones where the cars will be trying to exit from either way, but because the space is only enough for one vehicle, they'll end up scratching each other. And that has been something that we've seen, so it's played out before us. And then, as mentioned, we have the other safety risks, so when cars are stuck in the middle and they've got two on either side, no one can reverse. So naturally, one has to go onto the pavement or try to maneuver around to allow one car to pass, and even that is a risk because they keep collecting. So it becomes a sort of a long line of locked-in vehicles, and obviously it doesn't help that most people are just running to get their buses as well. So I mentioned the entrapped, but that is a point just to say that though reported collisions of vehicles may be light to nothing, and unreported collisions may be low, the risk to safety remains, and sadly it remains unsolved. Point 5 to 6, the report mentions that the one-way entry from North Hyde Road may increase rat running between said road and Station Road, as vehicles would obviously use the junction to bypass the signals. Now, it is one of the oldest tricks in the hat, and many who live in the locality know that is a way to bypass the junction. I think it's a natural outcome of having that bypass there. But I do believe that the implementation of that one-way system is still better than the present circumstances, which has rat running from both ends. So instead of just North Hyde Road, someone can drive in to miss the junction, the signals, you'll have it from Station Road as well, which obviously caused the lock-in. And as I mentioned, because the road is curved and it has pedestrians and parked vehicles for the shops, even when vehicles do rat run, they do it slowly. So just to keep that in consideration of your decision, time has passed.
We're at the 5-minute point.
We are at the 5-minute point.
Okay. Well, thank you. I think we got the gist of what you had. Well, did there any other? If I ask you a couple of questions, you might be able to get in any points that you might not have got out of your your time. So
Yeah.
you use that opportunity for the
100%.
questioning to get any points out. That's
100%.
Don't miss that chance.
Yeah.
Okay. Have we got anything from ward councillors? We don't have any. Okay. So we'll go straight into maybe a couple of questions.
Mhm.
As I said, if there's anything you think you've missed in that
Yeah.
timescale, then please feel free to bring it up.
Brilliant.
I've got a couple of questions, but Steve, over to you. What's your sort of feedback on what we just heard from Mr. Thind?
Thank you, Mr. Thind. That was really, really helpful, because obviously, you know, we only can go on the data that we have. We're not there every day to see the reality of it, and we can be there for so long, but we don't see it on a day-to-day basis as the residents do. So your testimony has been really, really helpful to me to better understand the situation. But just thank you for it, really. But I don't have any particular questions for Mr. Thind at this time. Thank you.
No, I think, again, thank you for that, Steve. There's a couple of points I want to just pick up and just have a little bit of a conversation about something that's in the report and some of the things that you just raised there. So one of the things the report does touch on is, if we were to go down this route, there are a couple of unintended consequences that could come with it. You talk quite rightly about the reduced rat running from both angles. But I think it mentions in the report that it could actually increase speeds if you've got just a one-way system there. So that's one thing that we'd need to look at. The other one I'm just keen to understand is and then one of the other areas in the council that I'm responsible for is economic growth, and I'm also keen to sort of protect our retail outlets as well. So I just wanted to maybe do we have a view on how the shopkeepers are feeling about this? Because I'm just conscious that maybe having a one-way system that makes it a little bit more tricky for people to visit the shops, is that going to put people off and reduce footfall?
Yeah, no, and that's a fair point. So the petition had most shopkeepers sign the petition.
That's going to be my next question. So
yeah, so you had most of the petitions are themselves the shopkeepers or local users. I was going to have Gurinder Singh from GS Cycles, our local bicycle wizard, come and give a testimony, but he wasn't able to make it because he's closing up the shop, quite ironically. So yes, they are supportive of the petition. Now, when we were doing this petition, they also had, I think, the rightful question that the report mentioned as well is, well, how will then people come in if they're coming from Station Road? And that was going to be the last point, is the access. So obviously, when you're making it a one-way system, you're restricting one of the two accesses to this road. The report says obviously vehicles will then have to bypass the signal on Station Road, then take a right onto Northside Road, and then try to come in from where there's traffic. At the moment, I don't think that's any different from the way that people who are coming from Haystown navigate the entrance, so it's exactly the same way the Haystown people have to do it. And secondly, and I must use sensible drivers, especially when I'm driving, that sounds a bit up myself, but when I'm driving, you keep a gap where the entry is on Northside Road, because you know this is when vehicles will enter. So if anything, I don't think that entry by blocking the exit of Station Road, so coming up from Station Road, is going to be any different from how Haystown users use the road. And secondly, I think we can actually supplement the one-way restriction by keeping maybe a keep clear road marking for the entry on Northside Road, because that is actually how it's meant to be. And I also noticed that the picture, I think on the next page after the report comments, it has aerial view of the location. And even then, I think, I don't know if it was done consciously or subconsciously, but we've got a give way road marking specifically onto Station Road, but not on the Northside Road bit, which tells me that surely that was intended so when cars enter from Northside Road, they give way to the traffic approaching on Station Road and then exit through that way. So I think the shopkeepers, myself, who led the petition, were all aligned that it's safer that way. And I think they also realise that most people don't bring their vehicles anymore because they're just scared of getting jammed in. And now it is becoming just a rat running bypass.
Okay. Well, no, thanks for sharing those thoughts. Again, I think it's important that we just have the whole picture, and certainly, you know, we don't want to be doing anything which is going to be impacting on our retail, our retail businesses on that parade. You mentioned earlier on about history of incidents, and I think it's covered in the report that there's been no major incidents reported that require emergency service intervention, but that doesn't mean to say there hasn't been incidents. You know, we're not saying it's completely accident or incident free. Clearly there's going to be some issues which aren't reported through the usual channels, so that's not lost on us. But if we go back to the report, and again, thank you, appreciate you sharing your thoughts on this. this is an interesting petition, and I think it's one that we need to do some further work on. And I think there's certainly there's scope for a further recommendation to be added. I'd like to really understand how this service road is behaving in terms of how much traffic, which direction is it going in, what are the speeds. So I'm going to recommend that we add a third condition which talks about putting in some speed surveys, but we can do that. Again, similarly, you would have heard the previous petition, so we'll do something along those lines, if that's okay. Steve, do you think?
Certainly, I think that'd be really helpful to understand traffic movements and what time of the day, and it will clearly show if there is these blocks in, like you say, that will come out of the survey, so it'll be a helpful tool, I think.
We'll gather a lot of data from that exercise, and it will enable officers, our highways engineers and teams to sort of look at what are our options for designing. If we were to go down this route, what are our options for designing, a scheme which is going to work for the highway, because it is a very, very busy junction. One of the busiest junctions, certainly in Hayes, if not, for the borough. So we need to be mindful of any interventions that we put in place. Is there a knock-on impact? And you quite rightly mentioned the keep clear sign. In actual fact, Steve and I talked about that earlier on when we had a little pre-meet. So we got 2 recommendations in the paper, which is to meet the petitioners. So again, thank you for addressing us this evening, and for anybody else that might have been watching. The second recommendation is about, subject to the outcome of these discussions, officers should add this request to the Council's extensive programme for further investigation, possible future consultation, and I'm going to add a third recommendation, which is to add the 24/7 speed survey. So independent 24/7 speed survey of traffic surveys on Northfield Parade. So if we can add that one in, Naveed, that would be fantastic. Okay, I think that brings us to the conclusion. So again, thank you for addressing this again this evening.
Thank you.
And I think that brings us to the end of the 2 applications, or the 2 petitions that we had this evening. So that brings us to the end of the meeting. For anybody watching on YouTube, thank you very much for watching, and we'll bring the meeting to a close now. Thank you and good night.